Did you know that anything to do with real estate, we're talking renting, buying, selling, you name it, is always in the top 10 stressors of the human experience? Your host, Brad Whitesell, has been in the real estate business in North Carolina for over 25 years. He's been doing appraisals, buying, selling, and property management, and much more. He certainly can attest to how stressful this work is, not only for people in the industry, but for you, the consumer. This podcast is on Mental Health News Radio Network, and he'll be offering tips, tricks of the trade, but also mental health professionals and advocates to help make this all-important journey easier and more peaceful to navigate. Sit back, enjoy, and tune in. Welcome to Peak Dwellings. Hi, everyone. Kristin Walker here with our Peak Dwellings podcast, and we are maybe 6 weeks out, maybe not that long. It feels like a whirlwind from the devastating storms that hit Western North Carolina, and we're going to talk about that and the impact on the mortgage and housing market and things like that. Just give a slice of that and our experiences on today's show. So I'm going to turn this over to my cohort, Brad Whitesell. Brad, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Kristin, I hope you're doing well.
Yep.
I'm so glad we're back in the groove, so to speak. And of course, we've got Robyn Mondin with First Citizens Bank here, who is such a valuable resource. But it's really just good to get back into something that we consider normal and that feels good, and that we can hopefully bring some content to the table that benefits everybody since Helene hit on September 27th.
Absolutely. See, I don't even know. Okay, so it hasn't been a month. I don't even know the date.
2 months. Yeah, we're coming up on 2 months.
Yeah, crazy.
I know.
Well, Brad, take it away. And Robyn, thank you for joining us again.
Absolutely. So glad to be here.
Yeah. So Robyn, a lot has changed since we spoke over the summer. And obviously the biggest thing is Helene, and it's impacted all of our lives on a personal level, but professionally, for myself, being in real estate and property management, and yourself being in lending, it's really proven to be a complicated landscape. Can you tell us how things are going on your end?
I'm absolutely happy to bring you up to speed on that. So, directly after the storm, well, I shouldn't say directly because of our inability to have power and cell phones and telephones and all of those basic things that are needed to conduct business. It was probably at least 10 business days before I had any idea what was going on in my email or voicemails or things like that. So I was down for about 10 days, which I think is the longest vacation that I've ever had since being in the mortgage industry.
Is that what you want to call it?
Well, I guess, what do we call that? Unplugged time,
There you go.
It was certainly definitely not a vacation. It was definitely hard life every single day. But once I was able to get back on the system and things like that, first of all, I was very pleased that my team around me here, much of which was not in Western North Carolina. So one of my processors is in the Triangle area. One of my assistants is in the Triad area. And then my processing and underwriting and closing teams are down in Columbia, South Carolina. So all of those areas were basically untouched. And the good news is they sort of surrounded me and carried on, and got everything that was in process that could continue, on the path of which, they could get to closing. But as you know, a lot of our customers who were under contract here in Western North Carolina found that either the properties they were looking to purchase were damaged, or the property that they were trying to sell in order to purchase another property was damaged. Or if there was, as in some cases, if construction wasn't complete, or that construction got sidelined or tabled, as the, as people were trying to work through devastation and life-threatening, type of construction needs that needed to be handled, before completing a home. So things definitely slowed down and took a different turn.
Yeah, you and I have learned that the hard way, haven't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for our listeners, Robyn and I are involved in a deal right now where it was new construction, and we've kind of been at the mercy of utility and government providers as far as getting utilities hooked up on this new house, and of course you can't get a certificate of occupancy, final clearance from county officials, and it just makes things very frustrating, and there's no precedent for this. So it's not like we can pick up the phone and get action because they were prioritizing people that were in uh, life-threatening type situations. So our new construction was taking a back seat.
Right. And at first you think, as it should, right? Because there were
Right.
people who, I know that all of us probably didn't have power for a few weeks, so that there's a good reason for it. It's just when, 2 weeks turns into 8 weeks,
Yeah, and
that
I'm not
there's,
naming any names in case you
yeah,
didn't notice.
exactly. As 2 weeks turn into 8 weeks, it makes it hard for everyone. But we've navigated that. We've done what is needed, and so now I think we're in the stage where we want to see normal business rebuilding. And I've been fortunate that I've actually received, in the last month, in the last 4 weeks, a pretty decent number of purchase contracts, a surprisingly decent number of purchase contracts. And I was personally a little bit worried, about how would this affect things. But I guess life does move on, and people still need to purchase properties. And we've seen people purchasing second homes. So it has not deterred that market necessarily. And probably the most active that I've seen is people still wanting to build homes. So I've seen a lot of construction to perm activity. And as soon as the builders have time to finish up quotes and contracts and things like that, we've got people who are ready to start building their next home. So it
Yeah, and
has,
I think that makes sense. No question marks about it. If you're building your own home, you don't have to worry about whether it received any storm damage or not.
that's true. That's true. Now, certainly we still have a lot of people in our area that are deeply affected by heavily damaged homes or homes that are no longer inhabitable, or that are not there altogether. So they are still in the very early stages of digging out, and they're not even close to the part where they decide to replace that home, or, that they can't even work through the insurance claims at this point. Um, so,
Yeah, I'm still waiting.
so, I think we're still, even though it feels like what that 7 or 8 weeks ago, in some ways feels like a lifetime ago. In other ways, it feels like last week. Um, I think we're still in the early end to see what the total or overall impact will be. But I have been um, encouraged, to see people from outside still coming back to Western North Carolina to look for homes and properties.
Yeah, and I think I'm kind of seeing the same thing. It seems like with each passing week, there are little reminders, both positive and negative, as far as the storm's impact, but I think the positives are becoming increasingly more plentiful. Just like Asheville got water back yesterday. We're recording this on November 19th, and Asheville water system finally got back online without a boil advisory yesterday, so that's huge. We've still got a lot of volunteers and a lot of groups here, and yeah, life does go on whether we want to sit around and feel sorry for ourselves or not. We really can't as a
That's
community.
true. That's true. And I've really been encouraged in the way the community come together. And I hear people who have called me with questions about the insurance claim process who were completely devastated by the storm. They've shared with me some really wonderful stories about the community and how it came together for them. And I had just closed on a loan. It was actually supposed to close the day of the hurricane and got delayed a week. But they were moving here from somewhere else. And they said that after witnessing the behaviors and the community coming together, and after witnessing everything that they witnessed after the storm, they knew for a fact that they were moving to the right place, that they were calling Western North Carolina home for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't share all of the different stories, but many different stories that I've been told that are both gut-wrenching and truly heartfelt, about what a community really means and community coming together. And, as a mortgage lender, I've always said to people, about being a local lender, that I'm going to take care of them and do the right thing because I live here in the same community. You have to see me at the grocery store, But that really means a lot when you're out, looking for water and basic necessities, and you run into different people that you've worked with, that are doing the same, and everybody's making sure that everyone is taken care of and pulling in together. It really kind of drives home what a real community is.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest takeaway from this whole thing, and just the fact that, hey, politically, ideologically, whatever you want to call it, people put that stuff aside and have really banded together to help out, because you don't have time to sit there and figure out where somebody stands on a particular issue. You just know they need help, or you've got to go give help.
Right.
There's no time to sit around and think about all that other stuff.
Right. As it should be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and for me, I had to leave town for a couple of weeks. I mean, I know you were without a lot of stuff where you were. We had to leave because our house was not habitable due to a flooded basement, and just the terrible stench that was emanating from the basement because we couldn't clean it up until the insurance people came. And so we had to leave town, and I struggled with not being here. I felt like I didn't help out as much as I would have wanted to normally, but just watching everybody step up like they did, as time goes along, I'm more appreciative of it, I think.
Absolutely.
So, Robyn, with First Citizens and you specifically in the mortgage division, there's a certain time frame where you're able to get deals accomplished, and same for me being in real estate. I mean, we go under contract on a property, and typically we look at a 30 to 60 day closing window. Sometimes it's a little bit shorter if we've got to slam one through, but usually 30 to 60 days is about right. And you mentioned early on that your team is spread out a little bit, and it sounds like that has actually worked to your advantage. So I'm kind of assuming that now that you've got technology back up, that your time frame for conducting business is roughly unchanged. Am I right?
That's exactly right. It is roughly unchanged. If anything, because I didn't take applications for that 10-day period, um, my team has a little bit more bandwidth here once we started, locking loans and actively pursuing new business again. We probably had a little bit more bandwidth and kind of pushed them through a little quicker, even. But
That's awesome.
that it is roughly unchanged. Now, I do have another assistant in Hendersonville market, and she and I we were the only two on our team that was offline. But other than that, my team is spread out, and that actually worked very well in our favor. I've always said that I want to work with the best people, regardless of where you sit, because this is a digital and electronic world now.
There
So
you
you
go.
can have the best people that do not have to sit right beside you.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's not much more I can add to that. And you deliver on it. I mean, you're not a bunch of hot air.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, there's a
I'll
reason
take
we're
that one.
talking, right? There's a reason we're talking. So I do want to, without getting too political, now that the election is in the rearview mirror, do you see any trends or any movement in rates and the overall lending environment as far as people now can focus on their lives instead of worrying about the election, or anything that you can add on where the Fed might be heading?
So when you're offline for 10 days and then you log back on, you don't see those daily rate movements. And so you see a bigger jump. And so when I logged off the night before the storm, our rates were in a pretty decent position. When I logged back on 10 days later, we had the effects of the bond market, and the bond market was, it's concerned about the overall level of debt. They're concerned about inflation popping back up. And so as a result, rates have been up. So rates in October were higher than rates in September. And we've seen it stay, quite honestly, within a 8 to 1/4%, range over October and early November. Haven't seen any real changes, neither positive or negative, since the election. From a standpoint of people who were waiting on the election to make a decision on what to do, no matter which side they were on, at least it's behind us now. And no matter which side they were on, if that was what their waiting period was based on, that's over now. So they can decide to either move forward or not move forward. The Fed's outlook is overall unchanged for next year through the end of the year, or at least from everything that I've read. I think they want to be careful, but I think that regardless of the election, they were probably going to be careful. They have shown that history of being careful about, bringing rates back down. The last thing that they want is for inflation to pop up and become uncontrollable. And I think all of us, no matter which side you're on, can see the value of that. So I think they will continue on this careful path. I don't think they'll come in and cut rates, 2% in an overnight period. I don't see that happening. I think they'll just continue on this careful path. And hopefully we end next year better than we began. I do think it would be helpful if people had an idea of what a normalized rate market looks like. So for the record, 3% was not a normalized rate market. And I think that if people are waiting to get back to 3, they could be waiting a very long time.
They're going to be waiting a real long time.
Yeah.
Well, and then, I think people need to understand that even where we are right now, which is what, 6.75 roughly, is that about right?
That's roughly in the right range. That's right.
Yeah,
The
yeah. I mean, it's still below the historic average.
Right, right. And would it help us get more home buyers in homes from a qualification standpoint if we could get back into the 5 range? Certainly. Those can have real implications on the ability to qualify. And as price points continue to stay in a higher range than what they have historically been in our area, it would help. But just because it would help does not mean, that rates will be back in the 3 or maybe even the 4% range. I don't try to be a crystal ball, type personality where I say what I think rates will be.
Yeah, totally understand.
Yeah.
That would not be wise for any of us.
No, it wouldn't be. If I could tell the future, I would be in a different line of work, I guess.
So, Robyn, I have to ask you. So, you're not sitting in your office wearing a magician's hat with a crystal ball in front of you? I mean, why did we even do this today?
I mean, I do wear many hats as a mortgage banker, but a magician's hat is not one of them.
Why?
Yeah, I kind of put it out there for you that I didn't ask you to exactly make a prediction. Yeah. So business as usual for the most part for First Citizens and for Robyn Mondin.
Yes. So as far as First Citizens, none of our guidelines, none of our practices have changed since the storm, with the exception that if my appraisal was done prior to the storm, we had to send a property inspector on a drive-by just to make sure that the property wasn't damaged, didn't have a tree through the roof or something like that. That's just to protect our borrowers, from buying something that has existing issues.
Yeah, let me ask you about that, Robyn. I'm a certified residential appraiser, and since we have a lending relationship together, I don't do work for First Citizens in the appraisal end of things. But all of your deals that were in progress, did you have to have your appraisers go back out to practically every property?
Yes, that is correct.
Wow.
They didn't, it wasn't necessarily an appraiser. It could have been a property inspector as well.
Yeah.
Just depending on what they found. So if they went back to the property and everything appeared to be fine, we didn't see high water marks on the exterior of the property. We couldn't, there was no evidence of flooding or damage to the property, then we moved on. If there was evidence of damage to the property, that's where it would then go back to the appraiser to do an inspection, a re-inspection, a true re-inspection of the property. So yes, we had to do those on every single one of the appraisals that was done prior to the storm. We've worked through all those now, and I'm glad to have that behind us because while those are done quickly and quite often under the radar, meaning that no one knows that, it's done so quickly, they don't even know they're waiting for it, But we have to do those in order to deliver them to like a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. You have to do those disaster re-inspections.
As if these things weren't complicated enough, right?
That's right. Let's throw in one more inspection.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Robyn, we thank you for coming on the show. Can you tell our listeners how they can reach you with any questions?
Absolutely. So the easiest way to reach me is my cell phone, which is 828-691-8172. You can also find me on the website, which will go to, it forwards to First Citizens, but it is www.robyn, which is ROBYN, Mondin, MONDIN.com. So that's robynmondin.com.
I think we were supposed to record this, I believe on Monday, September the 30th. Is that right, Kristin?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Somehow I think I tried to call you, and then I think I just said to myself that this ain't happening today.
I knew in the back of
So,
my mind that, because I try to keep some of my upcoming calendar things sort of in my mental checklist. Um, and I knew in the back of my mind we had that date. And that was one of those days. I mean, you couldn't even, you were just completely in I was completely in SOS mode from a telephone standpoint.
hmm
Same here.
And
yeah, I
the
think
only
my
way
phone
you were going
service
to
got
talk to
better after the
someone,
storm. Yeah.
that's right. The only way you were going to talk to someone is if you happened to see them in person.
And then we all
Yeah. Yeah.
feeling under the weather, and we tried to do this again, and we all three, I mean, this is, I think we share this from the mental health perspective of dealing with big deal things like what we're talking about, storms, mortgages. we You have to really take care of yourself, because we all were not feeling well, and we sat down to do a show, and we're going to report on what we're seeing and give this content, and we all went, none of us really feel well today. Microphone is, let's just put it off another week. And if that's what if you can do that, take care of yourself and do it.
Absolutely. You're right. Boundaries.
I
Exactly.
think we've all learned a lot of lessons from this, whether we wanted to or not. At least I'm speaking for myself.
Agreed. I feel empowered to really work on creating a much tighter and really held together with the things that are important to me in terms of building community. So, and I think that's really for everybody to do right now. So, thank you, Robyn, so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Robyn.
Thanks, listeners, for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Peak Dwellings.